sun had dipped low behind the jagged peaks of the Pacific Northwest as I drove deeper into the woods. The stretch of highway was deserted, and the trees that bordered the road seemed to shift in the twilight. Their branches brushed against each other, whispering secrets I couldn't quite hear. My hands tightened around the steering wheel as an uneasy feeling settled over me. I'd driven these roads hundreds of times before, but tonight something felt wrong. I was headed to a cabin near Terrace, BC for a weekend getaway with my friends. We had done the trip so many times before because it was sort of our way of disconnecting, resetting in the middle of nowhere. But as I inched further into the wilderness, a strange weight seemed to press down on me. I glanced at the darkening forest. It was as if the woods were watching me, and I couldn't really shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. After what felt like an eternity of winding roads and towering pines, the faint glow of cabin lights appeared through the trees. The sight of them brought a fleeting moment of relief. I parked the truck and stepped out, breathing in the cold, crisp air. My friends were already there, clustered around a fire, beers in hand. They greeted me warmly, their laughter cutting through the stillness. As the night deepened, the fire crackled, and we swapped stories under a canopy of stars. Mark, always the instigator, leaned forward with a smirk. "Ever heard of skinwalkers?" he asked, his voice dropping low. "They're said to roam these woods, shapeshifters, able to take form of animals, or even people." Jenna rolled her eyes, but I could see the unease flicker across her face. "Not this again, Mark." "They're real," Mark insisted, glancing towards the trees. "People have vanished out here. Hunters, hikers, without a trace." With a sense of unease, I tried to laugh it off, but his words sorta stuck with me. I stared into the flames, feeling the weight of the woods pressing in. The firelight cast long shadows, and in the flickering dark, I could have sworn I saw something move. A gust of wind swept through the trees, and for a moment, everything fell silent. No crickets, no rustling leaves. The laughter around the fire died off, as we all sat in the thick, oppressive quiet. I glanced around, my skin prickling. It was as if the entire forest had stopped to listen. "Do you guys hear that?" Jenna whispered. At first there was nothing, just a soft crackle of the fire, but then faintly, the sound of something moving in the trees. Quiet, careful, and deliberate. Too quiet to be a deer. Too calculated for an animal, for that matter. I held my breath, listening to whatever it was. It was circling us, but deliberately trying to stay out of sight. "Guys, it's probably just a raccoon or something," Lucas said, though he didn't sound too convinced himself. I immediately stood up. "Guys, maybe we should head inside," I suggested, trying to sound calm. Everybody agreed. Moving quickly to douse the fire, we retreated into the cabin, making sure to lock the door behind us. Inside, the tension was thick. We huddled near the windows, peering into the pitch-black night. The trees outside stood still, their branches swaying gently in the wind. But that feeling of being watched clung to us. Nobody said it, but we all felt it. The presence, it seems like it was just beyond the light. Time crawled by, and though we tried to distract ourselves with conversation, the sense of unease gnawed at us. It was Jenna who heard it first. A faint tapping sound, like footsteps, but off, sounding uncoordinated. We all froze, listening to where the sound was coming from. It seems like it was coming from back of the cabin. "Do you think something's out there?" Jenna whispered. "No one's out here but us," Mark said, although his voice was lacking confidence. The tapping grew louder, moving along the side of the cabin, but then stopped. My heart pounded in my chest as I stared at the door, almost expecting it to burst open any second, but nothing happened. The cabin remained still, the silence suffocating. What seemed like minutes, or maybe even hours, went by. It was impossible to tell. And then, faintly through the howling wind, I heard it. A voice, soft and distant, carried on the breeze. I strained to listen.
What are you doing out here?
The voice. It sounded really familiar, but I couldn't put my finger on it.
Don't
It sounded like me. Sarah? Jenna's voice broke the silence, her face pale. Did you just call me? I looked at her with horror in my eyes. No, I didn't say anything. We all exchanged terrified glances. Something, whatever was out there, was imitating us. The tapping resumed, more insistent this time, but no one dared to move. It was as if the very walls of the cabin were closing in, suffocating us with that terrible unseen presence. We stayed like that for the rest of the night, huddled together, too scared to even breathe. The feeling of being watched over never left. The wind howled, the trees groaned, and that voice, my voice, echoed faintly through the woods. It never showed itself, whatever it was. It didn't need to. It was already in our heads, which almost seemed worse. By dawn, the forest had gone silent again. We gathered our things in silence, each of us too afraid to say what we were all thinking. As we drove back down the winding road, sunlight filtered through the trees, and I just couldn't shake the feeling that something was following us. I glanced back at the woods, bathed in golden light, and wondered, did we really leave it behind? Somehow, I doubted it.